Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Batwoman. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously you have Team Batwoman trying to locate Angelique, trying to find out where she was taken. And obviously with the way things were set up, Luke was like, oh yeah, I can basically find out, I love that he's like saying the technical babble, and then like Mary was translating it, being like, oh, you'll be able to find out where Angelique was. And he kind of looks at her and smiles. She's like, I'm more than just a pretty face, guys. So they're tracking down Angelique. They end up hitting up one of the spots where the Faceless Gang was, society was. And obviously Batwoman comes upon Alice, who is basically dismantling people, torturing them, because they end up like kidnapping Ocean, which I love her waking up from that being like, ugh, like it's just like almost like and she was basically emotionally drunk because literally all those feelings came rushing back, all those memories. So it's kind of like it was like an emotional high, and it's like, oh, now you're kind of clear-headed of like you kind of got that out of your system, and it's like, ugh. And she's trying to sneak out, kind of like the walk of shame. But she gets knocked out, Ocean gets taken, but she's torturing everybody just as Batwoman arises. So it's a situation of, hey, I'm the only one that has the information where everyone is. Oh, this guy's still alive. He's dead. Okay, now I'm the only one who knows where everyone is because you're after Angelique. So they took a friend of mine. So I'm trying to get him back. So it's an interesting element of the very unlikely allies working together against a common enemy of my enemy type of situation. This is like literally like the Joker and Batman teaming up. Legitimately, I think that's like the best comparison in this regard. But that's so interesting. I guess actually a more apt description would be like Barry joining up with Eobard, which reluctantly that's happened, but that's probably a more apt description considering like Eobard killed his mom and Alice killed Ryan's mom. So it is a situation where it's like, well, if I want to get Angelique back, and I do care a lot about her, especially because, and that ends up becoming a like back and forth between them, because it's like, and even like Alice being, very good at reading people to a certain extent. It's like, oh, you want to get Angelique back because like you grew up in the system and you got adopted while she ended up getting left behind. So it's a twofold of she never had someone like your mom, Cora, to take you in, so she never really had a chance. And the one person she was tight-knit with, the person she always had your back, but it's like, I guess when the time came, you didn't really have her back. So you saving her now is to try and make up for the past. So that kind of becomes a part of the conversation too. The driving the Batmobile is like, do you want me to use the injector seat? It's like, well, is that a thing? Do you want to find out? Kind of. It's like, Jesus, Alice, you're like a child. And to be fair, like Alice, Beth is emotionally stunted. I mean, that trauma and the circumstances which she created, the persona of Alice, she's got this playfulness, but obviously it's to hide the deep-seated pain and psychological trauma she's suffering from, so she's got this childlike wonderment to her, but it's just, it's her means of trying to, like I said, bury all the pain she's dealing with. So obviously they're dealing with the Faceless Society, kicking some ass. It's like, honestly, we're actually a good team. Actually, I was referring to me in your car, but then like it's partway through it all. It's like if anything happens to any of them, like to him or whatever, I'll come back and kill you, or whatever. And Alice knocks someone out, and then Ryan pieces together. It's like, holy crap, you love him, don't you? She's like, what? That guy's like, no, I just kicked him out. It's like, no, Ocean. It's like, what? It's like, oh, it's your boyfriend. I mean, it's like I tried to kill him, and it's like, does that really mean anything? And then even Alice is like, well, that's true, considering how jacked up she is. Because it's like, you did try to kill him. It's like, yeah, but, extenuating circumstances kind of changed that. But now it's like, well, I've got all the memories back of everything. And it's like our little tryst kind of complicated things. So she wants to rescue him. But obviously it is a situation where, they're talking back and forth, because it's like, I get it. It's like, you want to try and get to Ocean before he finds out what you really are, because who could love a monster who can't even remember the name of some woman that she killed, referencing her mom. And it's like, that is the thing of like, because Ocean was the one who originally kind of quelled the beast inside of the anger and everything. To be fair, once again, it's a thing of, can you really say everything's 100% Alice's fault? Because she was a monster of many different people's creation. Cartwright, Sophia, and Enigma all ended up creating her, like, to a certain extent. So it's like, but it's also the thing of, you also have to take personal responsibility for your own actions, so that plays an element. It's almost like a nature versus nurture type of situation of, like, you know, like, what, you know, it's both that kind of created her, you know. So it's like, she has to take responsibility, but also at the same time, she's not 100% responsible for what her actions too. So, but also the argument could be, well, you're giving her a little too much leeway in that case. So it's understandable, right? But I mean, Ryan doesn't know the full extent of her story. Maybe if she did, it'd make her a little sympathetic. But it's also like an interesting conversation where, like, you know, for Alice, it's like, oh, like, you're like a lot like my predecessor. Like, my sister would do whatever she could to save me, and it's kind of, well, it kind of backfired, and it's like, well, she died. But the fact of the matter is saying that something, you know, from an anti-hero to a hero, which I love that you're labeling yourself as an anti-hero, but she's like, from one anti-hero to a hero, you can't save anyone, and you're going to lose who you are in the process, which I think obviously she's talking a little bit of personal experience for the fact is just how dedicated Kate, like, went above and beyond to constantly try and save her, and what it kind of cost her in the end in many different regards. So, but Ryan, it's like, yeah, despite everything, I am someone who doesn't forget, and ends up handcuffing Alice. And by the time, like, she gets inside, you know, rescuing Angelique and Ocean, and obviously while they're talking, Angelique says, hey, we're going to get you to that girl you won't shut up about. And obviously Ryan knows the truth, but she doesn't take that opportunity, because it's like, well, you're hurt, but also it's like, well, that's going to keep you going, so I won't, like, kind of take that away from you. But I think it's also the thing of, like, that's got to sting a little bit to being like, yeah, that monster Alice gets to have someone she loves. It's all because I think that's also another thing too. Is like, why should Alice, out of anybody, get a happily ever after? So at that same time, it was something at the beginning. We'll circle into the storyline, but it was interesting finding out what I figured. Like, oh, the whole thing was like Black Mask was going to get, like, Kate hypnotized and turn her into a weapon. Didn't expect him to, like, basically get Enigma to turn him into his daughter. Which I'm like, because he also says this thing of, like, right, I don't know whether it was a lie to keep the psychology, like, because, like, they got to keep the image of, like, Cersei, like, alive. I mean, so, like, it's also, like, hiding her face. It's also, but it's like, oh, I got to wear this mask. It's like, oh, you were burned while escaping Arkham. Like, part of me was like, could there be some, like, truth to that? Like, I know it's BS because, like, they need to cover, like, a cover story to keep the lie and the image and everything intact. That's why wearing the mask, because if she saw her true face, even the burns and everything, it's like, well, that's not me. It's like the mask is what, you know, was her mask. Because that was interesting to know that, too. Like, in the Sionis family, like, every family has, like, a replica mask made to be basically put on their grave. And I was like, oh, that's such an interesting story. And obviously I don't know if that's true to Black Mask or not, because he actually doesn't have a daughter in the, like, show, but I don't know if that's in Birds of Prey, but I don't know if that's something that's true to him in the comics, or whether that's something they made specifically for Batwoman, or, you know, what. Like, I mean, I don't know how true that is, because I don't think that came up in Birds of Prey, but maybe that's something pulling more specifically from the comics, the whole, like, family line, like, mask thing, because he, you know, it's a whole conversation about, like, mask have represented different things over the years, you know. It's like, and also saying, like, oh yeah, like, someone in particular once said, like, you know, everyone wears mask, which there's levels upon levels to that, because it also, like, if you want to get super nerdy, you can think of it like the Shin Megami Tensei, like, Persona spin-off series of, like, that's all about, like, the personas, like, all the different masks that you wear. Literal mask in some games, in particular, like Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal and Strikers, like, it being a literal mask that you take off to reveal the different personas that lay underneath, which your personas themselves are just a natural mask of, like, who you are, the different versions of the layers to your psyche. It's a whole thing, you know. It just kind of made me think of that a little bit. But getting Kate to become Cersei was kind of interesting. It's like, That's kind of crazy. Just like, wow. I mean, I guess it's like in his mind too. It's like, well, ultimately the irony behind it being like, well, Kate is Batwoman, plus she's the daughter of the head of the Crow, so it's kind of like a twofold thing. That's why I'm like unclear about whether he knows that she's Batwoman or not. Maybe he knows. I know he knows that's Jacob's daughter. There's that element, so it might be just that. But, like, obviously she had the bat suit on the plane when it crashed and everything, but that was, like, after the fact. Like, the suit was just kind of left behind, so they don't know that she's Batwoman, I don't think. So for him, he doesn't realize there's a twofold. At least I could be mistaken. If I am, do correct me in the comments down below. I don't think Roman knows, Black Bat / Roman knows that, she's Batwoman, If he does, like, well, there's the twofold, but there's like a level of irony behind it as well, like a twofold irony if he doesn't know. Once again, he's tight enough with Jacob to know that Kate obviously as his daughter, but not enough to know also about, well, because obviously only the insiders know that she was Batwoman. So, but like I said, I'm wondering, like, circling back to it, like the Cersei thing about like the whole Arkham Asylum thing. Part of me is like, well, we know Batwoman's kind of clashed in Arkham Asylum because of Alice and stuff like that. I was like, could it have been? Then it's like, that's where I'm like, where's this element of like she killed? Like I said, not unless, once again, that's a crisis thing, but I wouldn't think so. I mean, to be fair, the only one who would know is Kate. To be fair, she has memories of two different. Well, as a Paragon, she wouldn't have memories of this timeline. So maybe that's something they're kind of fiddling with. Like, yeah, the Kate of this Earth, of Earth Prime, ended up killing his daughter. So maybe there's a level element to that. Because, like I said, the only person we're aware of her killing post-crisis was Cartwright. So we'll see whether that ends up being the development or not. But, at the end of it all, which also, it's like interesting, like, for one, you had Cersei running to Alice, and Alice has no idea, like, oh, your sister's like right in front of you, and she sends her after Batwoman. So it's like Batwoman 1.0 versus Batwoman 2.0. It actually legitimately makes you think, like, who would be more skilled? I mean, to be fair, like, Kate's gotten very specific training, and I feel like Ryan's gotten, like, very traditional training, like, martial arts wise and stuff like that. I don't know, like, it looks like Kate had straight up the advantage, but I don't know. It's like, well, for one, she was Batwoman longer than Ryan was, plus, like, she's been training for years, so she was training to be a part of the Crows. It's not the same thing, but still it's a little different, so I think her circumstances of, like, training are different from Ryan, so that kind of gives her, I think, like, the edge. Plus, she's also believes, I'm sure, like, kind of believing yourself to be someone else. I think that probably, like, plays an element in just, like, how you fight me. I don't know. It was just kind of interesting to think about, because I was like, yeah, it seemed like she straight up had the advantage in the fight. It was kind of seeming like she was kind of on the winning side a lot, like, in this fight. Then Alice jumps in. But then, like, Ryan at the end of it all leaves her, because it's like, at the end she couldn't stop herself from, like, giving in to her revenge, because it's like, oh, once again, I'm not going to forget. Regardless, like, oh, we had our moments and stuff like that, haha, like, it made me, for a second, I did think of, like, wow, you are more human than I thought. Like, I didn't think you were capable of love, but the fact of the matter is, you're still the one responsible for killing my mom, so. And it's like, I remember your mom, short hair, purple sweater. I lied. I just didn't want to admit I did remember. She remembers everyone she ever killed. It's just like a lot of that guilt is it. But part of me is like, but wasn't she wearing a yellow sweater? But then I think maybe she was. But I think, like, a lot of times when we subsequently see her, she's always in that yellow sweater, because I think it's like that. Like, her memory of her mom on another occasion gets blurred with that night. So that's why, like, I just don't feel like I'm remembering correct. I was like, I thought it was a yellow sweater, not a purple sweater. And maybe that was a point, but like I said, do correct me. It might be, like I said, like, they blurred the lines with those, like, memories, because there's one memory where her mom has yellow sweater, but it's, like, it's a different memory. I think they're just kind of blurring with, like, that night. I think that's just Ryan's mind just, like, nightmaring it up, where it's like you have another good memory and it turns sour and bloody and terrible, But regardless of anything, she, as you said, not everyone can be saved, and she walks away. So it's like, not very heroic, but it's like, yeah, you kind of gave into your revenge. It's like, I mean, luckily Alice didn't get killed. She's like captured by Roman. And so it's like, Roman's like, I need something from her, which I'm like, what is that? Well, I guess it's because it's also an element of, well, maybe he doesn't know, maybe he knows. No one really knows that she's really Beth. So I was wondering, could that be another? Well, you already have Jacob on Snakebite, so that's why I'm wondering, like, is this to deal with the crows, or maybe this has to deal with Coriana because of like the Desert Rose. I mean, I'm sure maybe he's trying to use that to like help with the Snakebite. Maybe that's what that is. I mean, to be fair, Coriana doesn't have the Desert Rose anymore. She does know that Batwoman does, though. Well, her and Ocean. Which I'm wondering, will Ocean probably won't be too happy. He was thankful of Batwoman saving him, but it's like, yeah, you like leaving his girlfriend to die. Probably not going to be too happy about it, but we'll see. I'm curious to see what that ends up turning out. Because once again, it's also another thing of like, well, who knows what? So he probably doesn't know that, like, once again, it's like, oh, though Kate in front of you, it's like, oh, you turn her into your daughter, but her actual biological twin sister's right in front of her, because no one knows that Beth, like, only the insiders know, the only, like, main characters know that Beth is Alice and everything. So it's like, there's so many layers to this whole thing of like, there's so much information that's not on the table that makes everything even more tragic, and obviously he doesn't recognize the tragedy behind it, which, you know, so that's a whole thing within itself. So so there's that element to it. Enigma just kind of bounces off. I'm curious, like, I guess, like, I'm curious where she is. Like, what does she do after this? I guess it's just like a situation of, oh, I'm gonna disappear and just do my thing. So there's that. Then we have the whole Sophie situation this episode where she's trying to help out. Like, she calls up Batwoman, is like, yo, your identity's being threatened, because it's like, right, she knows about her being Ryan, but she doesn't express that. I'm like, I guess because she's waiting for the right time, but also it's like, right, I can't, like, be busting you for knowing that, because it's also like, I think she's also respecting the superhero code, because it's like, right, Kate had to leave a letter explaining the truth and everything. So it's an element of, I think it's a thing of, it's not my place, especially with their complicated history. Even at one point being like, oh, like, kind of cut the tooth. It's like, well, to be fair, she has a lot of issues with you. You now knowing who she is kind of should make sense why she has issues with you. But it's also a thing of, hey, you thought you were going to die on Coriana and you kind of leaned on me. Like, I thought we were kind of good, you know? So it's like, but it's like, hey, if your DNA's in the system, fact of the matter is, that could be general enough to be like, damn it, if my blood is in the system, like, she could just be like covering me there. But it's also like the fact that she immediately goes there and not be like, your blood's not in the system or anything, right? Then you should be good. Fact that she's kind of like throwing it out there like, hey, if your system's in the blood, if your blood is in the system, and it's like, it kind of seems like she mustn't, but, you know, maybe they don't, like I said, they probably don't think too much of it. It's just probably just a warning like, hey, you're trying to help us out. So for her, saving Angelique takes kind of priority, but for Luke, it's like, no, if you get exposed, like, Angelique's not going to die anytime soon, because there's no way he's going to kill her, his golden goose, because she can help with the snake bite, the whole point of kidnapping her. But also, it's like, the Bat legacy, all the good that you do, like, if you get exposed as Batwoman, like, this all kind of implodes and you can't do the superhero thing. So Mary and Luke are working with Sophie to kind of take care of that, but it's like, the person running the DNA is sitting on top of it. Like, people are, like, Sophie is like, they're literally sitting on this like there's nuclear codes. Because the dude, Tavroff, was kind of like, oh yeah, like, it was actually Jacob that kind of gave me the go-ahead about this, because it's like, should we really be focusing on Batwoman? It's like, we're putting her DNA above, like, all the rapists and backlog of, like, all the criminals we should be focusing on. But even Sophie, like, should we really, I know you don't like vigilantes, but come on. But it's like, I get it. Like, when you look at her, you see Kate, because you now know, you know, because it's like, he has so many mistakes, and I'm sure the snake bite helps with that. Like, you know, it's like, oh, going back and correcting a lot of mistakes in your memories, and like, oh, being against your daughter, who you now found out is the Batwoman, like, probably in his mind, we don't get to see it, but he's probably changing it. So it's like, no, we're good. Like, you know, I'm sure that all plays an element to it, because it's like, seeing Batwoman just a constant reminder of, oh, I've been hunting my daughter. I hated my daughter public. I tried to turn her public against my daughter. And, you know, I thought we were close, and no, you know, I thought I knew everything, but now she died thinking I hated her and didn't accept her, type of thing. So a lot of that's playing a role in this. But at the end of the day, like, Mary shows up and is like, hey, this should help and everything. It's like, oh, so you work with Batwoman. It's like, what? No, Luke just asked me to do a favor. You know, it's like, that's all it is. It's like, well, because at the beginning they were like, at the beginning of the season, it's like, did you know Kate was Batwoman? I had no idea. Wait, what? You know, asking Luke that, asking Mary that. But now I think it's a situation of, now that I know you're working with the current Batwoman, you definitely were working with OG Batwoman. You guys knew about Kate before me and everything. So, but now's not the time to really be pushing that. So it's like, okay, I'm going to put it in this device. I'm going to basically scramble the DNA. But there's so many being run at one time, and they're coded with numbers and not the actual names. And it's like, if we do this, we're going to be not only getting rid of Batwoman's DNA, we're also going to be getting rid of all the DNA of like murderers and rapists. So it's like, we can't do that. So, oh, I know another element, another way to handle this. And the moment she said, I was like, right, get rid of, scramble Ryan's DNA. Now, whether that completely deleted it or the very least scrambled it so they can't compare it, it's like, yeah, it's like basically the ones and zeros of it kind of gets muddled. So it didn't seem like it was quite like a complete deletion, but maybe that's the case. He just said like the ones and zeros kind of got messed up, so it couldn't be read. So I think her DNA file just can't be read. It's still there, because I was about to say like deleting it is going to cause some red flags, I would assume, system wise. But I mean, she's able to cover her tracks later on. Obviously not letting Luke know how she handled it. But at the end of the day, like, she finds the snake bike. Mary's like able to kind of get her clinic open. It's like, yeah, I got it, like, what's the word, inspected, so I'm good. And like, Jacob was kind of like, all right. And she's like, wait, really? And she didn't think that was weird. He's like, yeah, but you know, if it means you're gonna take my calls now, then yeah, the fax machine can stay unplugged just as long as I don't know that it's unplugged, you know. But it's like, Mary didn't think too much of like, yeah, how weird her dad was acting in that situation. He was actually sweaty, but she, you know, didn't think too much of it. So when like Sophie brings it up, like, has your dad been acting weird? Okay, I think he's on snakebite. But for her, it's like, her dad's too much of a goody two shoes. Like, no, there's no way my dad's doing drugs, like, you know, whatever. It's like, he's too, you know, Mr. the rules and everything. But to be fair, he's the perfect candidate for it, considering like all that he's been through. It's like, once again, a lot, you would think they would know the ins and outs of how the drug works and what it effects it has. So it's like, why it's so addictive, because it's like, hey, we're correcting stuff from the past, your memories. It's like, he has a lot that he would want to change. He has a lot of regrets, you know? So, but Mary's not thinking too much of it. But Sophie's like, if you really believe that, have the conversation with your dad. It should be a short conversation then. But because for her, it's like, he's been off lately, especially the way he kind of chewed into her out of nowhere earlier in the episode. That's what kind of signed it up. But it's like, yeah, just the way he's been acting. So we'll see whether Mary kind of goes through, if Jacob might cover it up enough that, you know, she doesn't want to believe it. So we'll see kind of what ends up happening on that front. But we also had the Angelique and Ryan thing. You know, it's like, Angelique's like, okay, I got the protection. I'm saying it. I'm going to tell everything I know about Black Mask, but I'll be actually in protection now. But, you know, because, you know, Ryan was blaming herself. It's like, I'm the one that told you to get into protection, and you got hurt because of me. But like, for Angelique, it's like, no, my choices led me here. Me wanting to be powerful, me wanting to be somebody. I put my own life at risk. Like, that's not on you, Ryan. That's on me. So when it's all said and done, Angelique wants to go into witness protection. She wants Ryan to go with her, but for Ryan, it's like, I have to stay here because I'm Batwoman. Obviously, you know, it's like, the center that's going to be built, there's going to be children like who never have to grow up in the same city that we did, also on Batwoman. You know, so I was wondering whether she was ever going to tell her, but no. If Angelique ever finds out, she's going to probably be upset of like, whoa, you didn't tell me you were Batwoman? Come on, you know. I thought we were tight. I thought we were good. Like, you know, yeah, we might be exes, but we go so far back to, like, you know, the foster homes and everything. So they kind of end up saying their goodbyes, sadly. But at least in her mind, it's like Angelique's safe in a way, you know, whatever, you know, at least she'll have a chance to kind of start over, have a better life. And I think for her, it's like, you know, she didn't get that chance all those years ago when I got adopted by my mom. But at the very least, this is her opportunity to kind of start fresh in a good way, too. So I think it kind of comes full circle in that regard. So I think that's kind of a nice thing to kind of, a potential way that they kind of wanted to kind of paint that in that regard. At least that's how I'm seeing it. But I'm really interested to see ultimately where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about today. Next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.